Mic check. Ha 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 ha. All right, boys, it looks functional. I'm having a problem with the power cord on the mic. I'm keeping it close so in case it comes out. All right. Hey, we already got one person in here. Welcome aboard, my friend. Can't see who you are. All right. Philip Cheek, what's up, man? How you doing, Phil? Been catching some fish, I see. I was going to start this chat off with, well, I think I titled it "How Money and Forage Are Similar." And what I mean by that one is, well, you can have 10 1-pound bass in a pond, say they could support 10 pounds of bass. Or you can have one 10-pound bass, but you can't have both. If you put 20 pounds of bass into a pond that only support 10, they're going to suffer greatly. John, what's up? Welcome aboard. And that's important to understand. That's the basis of pond management. Your forage supply is limited. And just like the title says, money's limited too. One guy I've been watching, he's probably the best guy to talk about money. It's called Gary's Economics. I'll try to tag it on YouTube if I can figure out how to do that. I'm still kind of learning. But look up Gary's Economics, and he talks about money kind of the way I talk about ponds, just real straightforward. And I've learned a lot from Gary. And I kind of had that correlation when he was talking about money. It's in limited supply. So if one person has all the money, then the rest of the people get no money. And I personally kind of have a grudge against that when you're being manipulated. That's why I'm starting to do it on YouTube here a little bit more and be fading away from Meta a little bit less. I'll use the Meta to advertise this, advertise for G-Crack. Shout out to G-Crack. Shout out to Mike Bucco over at Bullshad. We'll be using his baits. He's always been a supporter of the page. And I get better engagement, like light years better engagement, when I use those baits and tie the bait together with science. The last one I did, I think, was about lure color. And I think it's gone over 20,000 views and still climbing. So take that for what it's worth. You kind of got to do what's popular, not exactly what you feel is the right thing to do. So like I said, if I had 20 lure companies that, helped me out and never supported in any kind of way, I would love to use 20 different baits, but I don't. I've just got a few. Fortunately, G-Crack's got a lot of variety in their selection of baits, and I can think of a lot of different ways to use their products in posts and things. And then I can kind of double down, and I can help them and I can help myself. And it actually makes my page, advances my page further than using any pictures, that I happen to take, regardless if they've won photo contests or not, art awards or not. I can just take a terrible picture of any old Bellows gill and get 20K in views. So I'll be shifting kind of in that direction over there. Hooking up. What's up? Flipping Kicks. What's up? Welcome aboard, boys. Appreciate you joining. Flipping, how's the pond looking, man? What's going on over there? I haven't talked to you in a minute. He's got a pond in Georgia, not too far from the Sugar Hill Outdoors pond. Done some consulting over there. He's one of the, I don't know if you read the comments, he's probably one of the 5 people or so that has had me come out and actually look at a pond from Instagram engagement. And I don't know, it's crazy. You would think with all of the places that I've been and all of the engagement I do get, that paying gigs would come along more than they do. And they just don't. This is the wrong environment for picking up pond consulting of any kind. And pond consulting is tough anyway. I mean, I've said it a million times. I never made a full-time living just managing fisheries. Fisheries is kind of the whipped cream on a weed control, trash removal, sediment surveys. Did a lot of those, trying to think, what else did we do over there? A lot of, mostly that. I mean, mostly just weeds. That gets people going out, gets people motivated. The only time you ever got anybody motivated to do any kind of fish work was when there was a fish kill. And then they were extremely motivated to almost pay you any amount. I remember one place in particular. I think I did a post about it recently, but we can touch on it again. It was over by North Gwinnett High School where we used to go to school. And we used to sneak in and fish over there when we were kids. There was just a pond out by the road. We used to run cross country down that street, and there was nothing out there, but they developed it and put in a pond, or put a neighborhood around one of the ponds out there that we go fishing at. And it had a fish kill. I think somebody spilled some chemicals or something. Had a contractor that messed up on a pesticide deal or something, ant poison or something. Anyway, it killed mostly bass. There's a few dead bluegill, but it really knocked the bass in the head. Bunch of dead bass. And it was kind of a strange fish kill because I don't know, my experience with it, when you get a chemical kill, that's going to be more universal. That's when you get toxicity like that, it usually kills multiple species. Like we did see, there were multiple species dead. This just was really towards the bass. But the thing that jumped out to me about that bass population was it was extremely stunted. The bass were extremely low relative weights. We got Cheek in here. He knows he's doing good with his relative weight calculations and promoting that. Thanks for that, Philip. Doing a good job, man. But the extremely poor health bass, low weights on the bass, then you'll get secondary problems when that occurs. It's just not a lack. It is a lack of food initially, right? But then that lack of food creates other health problems and parasites and things like that. They can't fight off parasites and diseases as well as they could if they're more well fed, I guess the best way to put it. So I went to the meeting and everybody had a panic attack and they were ready to sue the world and hire lawyers and kill this poor guy for spilling some ant spray or whatever he did. So I did the shock survey and I pulled the seine around and I tested the water, and we sent some fancy water tests off to the labs and spent some, few $1,000 doing that and everything they requested. And at the end of the day, my advice to them was don't do anything. It did kill some fish. I think it was about 100 bass, but it was about a 4 or 5 acre pond. So it didn't eradicate the bass population. And actually what that bass population, it kind of needed to be thinned down anyway, because it was stunted. And I went and reported back, just don't do anything. Just leave it. And let's monitor it for a year or so and check it again and see what happens. But I don't think the kill has permanently injured, the fishery in any way. I think it'll be fine. And actually it was the fish that died. We cleaned them up, got them out of there, and come back a year later and all the bass that were left were healthier. We're starting to see a better diversity in size on the fish. And I got with one of the guys was a fisherman out there, and basically a lot like we're talking about here, just talk to pond management with him. And he started harvesting the 1-pounders and harvesting the fish that were underweight and looked poor due to parasites and whatnot. And he did a good job, or much like Flippin', he's doing a good job at his pond. And that little pond came back around, and the actual fish kill was a benefit to it. The bass got bigger, the fish were healthier, got into a feeding program. And as far as I know, that pond's still fishing real well. All right, Flippin' Kicks writes in, pond's doing good. The bass are looking healthier. Still not there. How do you still not there? Oh, there as far as where you want them to be. Well, we'll touch on that, but um, very abundant in all sizes. Good. Yeah. Okay. So I wouldn't um, I wouldn't worry about it if they don't approve the money for the shock survey. It can be real hit and miss with those stupid things, man. Like sometimes you can do a real good job in the same pond too. Like I've got year over year, I got decade over decade experience doing that type of work in the same place. And some years you can really whack them with the shock survey, and some years it's not even worth the money to do. So I wouldn't hang my hats, on like it being some kind of savior to your system. Put some harvest in the spring when they start biting. It's all you can do. Put heavy fishing pressure on them. And I've actually seen guys who did that, who got some buddies, and all right, boys, the crappie are on the bed, are starting to bite. They're doing their thing. Let's go. Let's go catch as many crappie as we can until they quit biting. And they do way better just fishing them out than anything I ever did electrofishing. So bear that in mind. It's not something you can throw money at and fix that way. I've seen 1,000 people do it, and it just doesn't work. And that's the problem crappie present. It's an uncontrollable variable. And the reason why, I think, has to do with weather, has to do with how the spawn sets up. The crappie are always way ahead of the bass on the spawn. So it's not actually the adult crappie. Well, the adult crappie do cause you some problems, but the majority of your problems come from the crappie fry. And sometimes harvesting crappie increases the health of the crappie because they were stunted and really in poor condition. And then you cut them in half, and then they get in better condition and their spawn gets bigger and creates an even bigger problem. Sometimes it doesn't do that, right? But sometimes it does. That being said, the crappie are born earlier. That gives them a head start on all the zooplankton and aquatic insects and things that the fish like to eat as they progress up to being piscivorous fish eaters. And once they transition to eating fish, it's about the time the bass are born. So you can lose big time bass reproduction loss to a crappie population in a pond, to the point where they can wipe it out, literally. Like you can just lose your bass population completely. And they kind of create a situation where you're spinning your tires. So going back to flipping his comment there, where his bass are not there, your bass are never going to be there. You got crappie. You'll never if you can get them to 100% relative weight, I'd say that'd be a freaking miracle. If you can get them over 90% relative weight, you've done excellent. One thing he did do is install a feeder. And like he said, the bluegill are very abundant and in all sizes. That is excellent. That's what we want to see. You want to see a nice diversity of size in the forage base. And you can, how do I put this? Okay. It's kind of like displacement, right? If you fill a glass up with water, right? And then it's filled all the way to the top, and then you drop some ice in it. That ice will displace the water, and you'll have some water run out over the glass, right? And you'll spill water out. Let's imagine that scenario is our pond and our fish population in our pond, right? So you added a feeder that will significantly boost the amount of fish that can live into the pond, just by feeding the bluegill. But it's a nice boost because crappie don't take the pellets. So it's another way to give your bluegill an advantage, because they will take the feed, and then you get that displacement, because the fish population is just like that glass of water. It always stays full, but what is it full of, right? Well, he's been harvesting crappie and he's been feeding bluegill. So his ice coming in is that extra bluegill population that's displacing the crappie out. And what we hope to do is remove enough crappie and displace, use that displacement technique to get enough bluegill back into the system, and reduce the crappie population enough that they don't do what I just described prior. Looking up, what size pond is bad to have crappie in it? 30 acre and under, more like 130 acres and under. Now, as you get up past about 50 acres, you'll start to see, like sometimes you'll see a 50 acre to 100 acre lake that has kind of pretty good relative weights on bass and crappie, right? But you'll also see some that don't. And on the ones that don't, they never do. Very similar to what I just described in the small, 3-4 acre pond, 2 acre pond, right? So you can see that pattern all the way out, even a couple hundred acres. I've kind of, you kind of see it flirting around where you just kind of feel like there's too many crappie, and they're not in a diversity of size. They are in overabundance, and they are all poor relative weight, and they all are kind of the same size. You really want crappie in a bigger impoundment, and most of the time that's not even possible. It's not even feasible. You got streams coming in, and especially in public water, you got fishermen bringing them, just throwing them in like idiots. So yeah, you need big water for crappie, or a river. Fish form in the river. They do good in the river. It's more of a river fish, in my opinion. But I hate trying to manage around them, and people always made me try to manage around them. They never took my advice of getting rid of the just dump the pond, get rid of the crappie, let's restock it and do it over again. Very few people take that advice. Very few people have decent fishing or good fishing. I call, if you can I would say decent fishing is what Flippin's got. He's flirting around. He's got he's able to maintain his bass population. He's able to increase his bluegill population. He's got catchable size bluegills, got catchable size. That's decent fishing. Now, how decent? That goes back to a measurement, and I need relative weights on that. If his fish are up around 100%, that's good fishing. Further below 100, that average drops. Goes into, I'd say at 90 you're at decent, at 85 you're getting into poor, right? So we use that measurement as a gauge, and you can literally use it as a gauge for every size class of fish: your 14s, your 15s, your 16-inch bass, or your 6-inch, 7-inch, 8-inch crappie, right? A lot of times you won't see crappie getting very much larger than that in a pond, just because there's so many of them, they'll stunt themselves. So he's got them from 80 to 100. So he's got that wide discrepancy from kind of poor getting into the like really bad, right, up to 100. That's really good. And that mixed range is kind of what I'm talking about. I would expect you should see, just kind of book knowledge wise. Well, not book knowledge wise, because I've seen it in the field. That's where I learned it. They didn't teach it to me in a book, really, but to me, it kind of seems like book knowledge. As the bass gets bigger, right? The 23-inch bass should be the ones that are up closer to 100% than, say, like the 12 to 15-inch bass, because the 12 to 15-inch bass are going to be competing with the adult crappie for food, where the 23-inch bass is going to be eating the adult crappie for food. Big difference. So I would expect, as those bass get north of probably around 18 inches, 16, 18 inches, they should be creeping closer towards that 100%. I don't know if that's the pattern you're seeing, but that's what I expect. That's what I would expect you would see. Oh, the bigger ones? Well, your bigger ones, that are looking like that, I would just harvest. If especially we're going into this number of years on the feed, now you're just dealing with old fish, and you can just anytime you've got a fish that low, they're just taking up space on you. You can get rid of those, even though it's a bigger fish. It's just really not. It's kind of on its last legs, really. Or honestly, it just depends on how many of those you're catching too. If it's just a few, you can put them back. They're really at the end of their lives when they're down that low, especially on feed with what you've got, and you've seen that discrepancy. Um, that 80 to 100 discrepancy is most of your fish, and then you get those real big fish that are that poor. That's something that's just at the end of its life on the downhill slide of old age, pretty much. That's what I would attribute that to. And you see them all the time like that. Even we might see a fish like that in a few years, like at Sugar Hill. It's been there for 6, 7, 8 years. Once it gets that old, once the pond gets that old, and every once in a while you're going to pull a real poor bass like that, and just fish tacos, whatever, throw them and feed them to whatever. All right, hooking up says caught the same 22-inch fish, 6.9 in July, and 5.8. You think it lost a pound, 1.1 pounds in a day? That is weird. I don't know how that happened, unless she had a big meal and just puked out a bunch of. I don't know. How are you determining that it was the same fish? Because I see a lot of guys say that, and it ain't the same fish. So 5.8 less than 24 hours later. The only way I could think of that is if you're positive it was the same fish, it had to have thrown something up and like lost a Oh, in May and then in July. I got you. Oh, I see. I see. Um, well, if you're certain it was the same, if there's a definite mark or something and you're positive it was the same fish, that could be any number of things. June, July, a couple months. Yeah, it's still a heck of a lot of weight loss in a short period of time. I would attribute it to maybe poor, handled poorly, hooked in the bad spot, picked up some kind of sickness or disease or whatever. Again, you get a high turnover of fish. I don't know who's sending me text now. That might be one of you guys, huh? Might be flipping. Where did I put my phone? Is that you hooking up? Okay, cool. I left my phone in there. I'll check them out later. Huh, that's interesting, man. That's kind of weird. But I mean, they do lose weight fast. Once it goes downhill, it goes downhill quick. If they get sick and don't feed, they go downhill fast. And that's why I beat on say fish handling so much. You knock the slime coat off, you handle them with dry hands, you boat flip them on dry carpet, you brain their jaw. God, that's a bad one there. That's a starvation death right there when they get a sprained jaw or broken jaw. I was talking about that post on the last time we did this, and those guys with the 16-pound bass lipping it and jumping out of the boat and landed in the parking lot with it lipped. I mean, give me a flipping break, man. That's a fish that could bust the world record in a year, and you got it out of the water. You got it in a live well all day in July. You lipped it. You suspended it by the jaw when you could have put it in a weigh-in bag that was laying right there. Then on top of the suspending it by the jaw, you jump off and add some G forces to that suspension. I mean, you might as well put a fillet knife to that dang thing. And it being one of the biggest bass I've ever seen in my flipping life. I lost my cool on that one, boys. I did. I'll admit it. And I'm not proud of that, but at the same time, to hell with those guys. If they can't if you're so far behind that you don't even know how to touch a fish, then you really shouldn't have a fishing license at this point. There is more than enough information accessible in everybody's hand that's just sad. What's up, Dave? Welcome aboard, man. Mhm. Oh, that's a good point, Philip. Yeah, she coulda lost egg weight at that time of year too. That's a, good catch, man. I wouldn't even think about that. You're probably right. It depends on where he's at. Um, oh, I see what you're talking about. She had eggs. Yeah, 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 yeah. But, I mean, at 22, that's still a good fish. Let me go back and look at that number. 22-inch. What's that number, Philip? That's a 6, right? So she was just a tad under at 6.9. She would have been significantly heavy for a 22 and then drop those eggs and bid back down. Yeah, that's probably what it was. Good catch, boys. It's probably egg weight. Mike, what's up? Welcome aboard. All right. So, cold water all year. Yeah, man. That might be it. Sure might be it. John Long, what's up? John says there's just so many people that don't care about fish care. Yes, yes, it is. And that brings me back to kind of where I want to talk about where I was leading today online. How can you not how can you how can you knowingly spread misinformation, right? Because there's one thing to like go on the internet and talk to people about, say, catch and release or spreading misinformation, say that way, unknowingly. All right. And I can give you a pass on that. But I sort of, like I said, everybody has every bit of information in the world has ever had in their hand, in the palm of their hand. You don't have to go to the science library like I did and look all this crap up. So that was a strange noise out there. Um, how do you get wind of, hear of? I'm assuming so these guys, with the way podcasts have gone, and as many as I've been on, and some of these other guys are going on. At this point, you would have to know that maybe, just maybe, what you're promoting something that's bad, and look into it. But they don't. I think we can think of one guy in particular we all talked about recently. Not going to call any names, but it gets to a point where if you know what you're doing, thanks. Yeah, I ordered that one from Amazon. I got a bunch of them. I got a Lebowski and one that says Pong. It's pretty sweet. Um, anyway, if you're knowingly spreading misinformation for money, boy, I don't have a lot of respect for that at all. That's just lying to make money. And man, I believe me, I've seen. It's not like there's not some freaking fish scientist guys that I've seen lie about fish stocking rates and things like that. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to say that everybody on this side, from you got to do your homework with anybody you're dealing with, but I still feel like if you're going to have your pond stocked, you're better off with somebody with a fisheries degree than somebody without. Because at the end of the day, they got a family to feed, they got sales to make, and if you want to stock 20 million crappie in your pond, you'll find somebody to bring them to you. As a matter of fact, I never stocked any. And I had calls about them all the time. Oh man, I don't put crappie in my pond. I'm like, well, I don't stock crappie in ponds. I'm not in the business of screwing ponds up. And you should see their faces when you tell them that. You should hear the conversation. They just floored by it. I just never did. And I don't know. It's just I had to fight it. And I have to fight it now. We still argue about it. Right now. And um, again, there's flipping kicks up there with a bunch of measurements with this wide discrepancy of bass weights. Because he's got competition in his pond. And we don't have that wide discrepancy. We don't have poor fish in Sugar Hill, and we don't have a real wide discrepancy. Like most of our fish are in a tight window on relative weight. And if we can maintain the balance and keep the 1-pounders, and we should be able to hold that for indefinitely. Really, I've had ponds go 10 years with balance like that. Sometimes ponds will go longer than that on their own with no harvest. Sometimes they balance out and stay right there, and you just get lucky and it works. Sometimes not. Most of the time not, I would say. Most of the time you're going to be doing some kind of work, pushing in a direction. And sometimes you're pushing in another direction. A few years you'll be harvesting, and then especially with crappie in the pond, it's like, okay, let's get rid of those larger bass that are in the 60% relative weights. Okay, those are terrible. We're not trying to grow those, pitch them. And then we get a few years of really, the bass just have no recruitment, right? And they don't come in, and you get no fish, born in. And you're stocking bass. So it confuses people. It's like, wait a minute, weren't you just like last year, 2 years ago, weren't you just harvesting those big bass and now you're stocking bass? It's like, yeah, because you've got something that's swings on you wildly like that. And that's a great point too, because you got to crawl before you walk. And what we're doing, we're talking about pond management, is we're looking at simple systems with just a couple species, right? So we're crawling. All right. This is what it looks like when we have bass and bluegill and red ear. This is what it looks like when you just add one more species, crappie, and it gets completely wiped out. And I've had this conversation, I can't tell you how many times, where I'm talking like this. It's like, okay, we're talking pond management, right? And we're talking simple system, and we're talking the basics. And then some guy, he's got it. Well, I'm talking about, like Lake Lanier, or bringing in examples from Lake Michigan and moving the goalpost that far out. But at the same time, like trying to save face is pretty much what it is, because they don't know what they're talking about. They think they just make crap up, obviously, and think that's going to work. It doesn't. Not with me. That word salad doesn't work with me. You guys have seen that. But you sorry, now I'm reading and losing my train of thought. I gotta quit. I gotta block that, because I get a good idea and then I read the comments and I lose my train of thought. Crawl before you walk. So we're crawling over here, learning about pond management and simple systems, and they're wanting to talk about, like I said, I'm talking about, this and that and the other, trying to save ego. And that's not, it's like, you can't understand how to manage 10,000 acres of water if you don't understand how to manage 2. You don't have any fundamental, right? It's like, you're not going to go play NBA basketball when you can't dribble. That's kind of the same thing. You've got no fundamentals. You don't know anything about anything. So no, you do not understand a 26 species system that's thousands of acres in size. No, you do not. Don't even try to even go there. I don't even try to go there. I'll go get a smarter dude than me that manages those to come on here to talk to us about that, because I know my place in the food chain. Right. I hear you. As a matter of fact, I'm probably the dumbest guy that ever graduated from fisheries biology school, to tell you the truth, man. Those guys are smart. They're master's degrees and PhDs and, you know, operating on a whole nother deal. But another really good point, and like I went down and go down there again to the Webster, Florida, where the fish hatchery is, and get some more content down there. But those guys, it's interesting here in Florida because they're specifically trying to maintain a Florida bass population. They don't let northern bass in here. You're not bringing, it's not like Georgia where you just throw whatever you want around. You're not bringing northerns down here, right? That's way illegal. They will light you up. So they're trying to maintain their native Florida, as they should maintain their native Florida bass population. So what exactly do you think is happening to the reproduction when they got to stock 4-inch Florida fingerlings? The exact same thing that's happening in our 2-acre pond. It might not be crappie that's eating them up. It might be, God knows, out there. Again, that's where it's going to get away from, like, where I saying, like, in ponds, I don't really need vegetation. I can manage your pond without vegetation. The St. Johns River, that eelgrass is critically important habitat to the bass reproduction, right? So people hear that, they hear the biologists down there talking about how critical the eelgrass is to the bass reproduction. And I can't blame them for assuming it, but assume that that's what they need in their pond. But they don't, because their pond doesn't link to the Atlantic Ocean and it's not the St. Johns River. We can get all the bass, we'll get more than enough bass reproduction without a stitch of plants in there, right? Whereas that is a completely different environment. So, yeah. I'm going to scroll back real quick and make sure I didn't miss anybody's comments. There are quite a few coming through. Hey, folks, welcome aboard, everyone. I don't think I missed anything there. What else you got for me, boys? I kind of touched on everything I wanted to talk about. I don't know. It's crazy, man. I try to put good information out there. What's frustrating, I think the most frustrating thing about it is to see somebody knowingly spreading misinformation and getting paid for it, and getting paid handsomely for it. Tell people what they want to hear so you can get paid instead of what they should hear so our fisheries can improve and we can, have a little bit better management, get everybody a little bit more on the same page and not so divided. Because, again, going back to one of the posts that I made, it could come a time when all of these fishing tournaments and all this public fishing gets scrutinized by people who are really against it. People call me PETA all the time because I'm telling them that's not how you hold a bass. And now suddenly I'm PETA and call me names like that. And I'm like, no, but if PETA was to hire me, I wouldn't go to work for them. But if they were to hire me, I could bust you up. I could eat your lunch twice, lunchbox, with your own videos. Just let me watch your videos. Watch this. Yeah, you get destroyed with your own work. And have an attitude like you know better than everybody else. That's the part that I don't understand, because I do understand the position that they're in, because I was in that position at one time. I stepped foot on campus at Georgia. I was 20 years old, 19, but call it 20. And I was a fisherman and had been a fisherman and watched everything and read everything and done everything that those, just like these guys. And listened to Dr. Gilbert and was like, I have never heard any of this before, but I certainly did not did not go, "Nuh-uh." As a matter of fact, my wheels started turning, and we weren't even out of the first class, and I was like, "There, that is television's full of it. Like everything that I've been taught is a lie." That's where I left within 30 minutes of hearing this information for the first time. I certainly did not argue with a PhD level, mind in science and a UGA fisheries professor about what I saw on TV versus what he can prove with science. That's the part where I just get disconnected from, like, how in the heck can you think that way? All right, Jackson's got one coming in. Let's see what he's got for us. I'm going to get my glasses, boys, because my eyes are crap. Got my blue blocker readers. Added an aerator, okay, and you keep dye. Not great on. I'm not a big fan of dye. I'll break that down. Still can't keep the already. I'm gonna assume already means algae. And someone told me you're hypertrophic. Okay. I'm gonna need a bit more information. Jackson, are we controlling filamentous algae or are we controlling planktonic algae? And then hypereutrophic. So what my question is can you pick the algae up and it's green slime and kind of clearish water, or is your water look like pea soup where you can't pick up the algae, but the water's really green? That's important. I'm going to need to know that. But while you're typing, I'll bust down the dye, and maybe I like that idea in this situation. Okay, no, I don't. I changed my mind. Floating filamentous. Okay, so the reason why your dye is not working is because your filamentous can float, right? And get away from it. The whole idea of pond dye is to limit light penetration. The limiting of light penetration kills all the plants that live under that 36-inch mark. I think that if you dye it real heavy, about 36 is about all you're going to dye it out. So how do I explain this? Okay, if you were pea soup green, I would probably say the dye might help you. Hypertrophic into plankton, you've kind of moved into the area where dye is a last ditch effort to try to control that. So it's good that you're not all the way out there into plankton and that you're dealing with filamentous. Filamentous you can control. But so what happens is, even if the filamentous is down on the bottom and you put the dye in the water and you shade it out, the filamentous will just float up on a sunny day. It kind of gets oxygen trapped in like bubble, and you'll see it in there on the sunny days, and it'll cause filamentous to rise up on sunny days and fall down on cloudy ones. So cloudy days it looks good, sunny days it looks like crap. And that's kind of a natural cycle you'll see with it. But because it can rise up to the surface and get out of that shade, the dye won't kill it. Now, the reason why I mentioned dye and that I didn't really like it is because the base of the food chain are our planktons. So generally speaking, we got phytoplankton, which is a plant-based plankton, and we got zooplankton, zoo animal, right? And zooplankton is like little bugs, for lack of a better term. And there's entire food webs of both. But just that's all we got to know about it. We don't need to know any more about it than that. So the amount of plankton in the water, you can test that. And you get a liter of water and you filter it and strain it and the test is called chlorophyll A. And what you're measuring is the chlorophyll in that microscopic plankton. And however much chlorophyll you have, right, will directly correlate to how many pounds of fish that pond can hold. So less chlorophyll A, less measurement, that'd be like a normal unproductive Georgia pond, and you'd be down there around 100 pounds of fish per acre, maybe less on average. Really green pea soup water, some other place, different water quality, different fertility, greener water. Now you're probably got a pond that holds like 300 pounds of fish per acre, just because the plankton is in higher abundance. Now, that doesn't mean that the fish will be 3 times bigger from the 100 pound to the 300 pound. That's not how that works. I can grow huge fish in 100 pounds of fish per acre, just like Sugar Hill Outdoors. That would be an average 100 pounds of fish per acre pond. I added a feeder to it. We feed daily. So we've taken that 100 pounds in Georgia and we've made it like a productive pond someplace else, probably 300, 350 pounds of fish per acre the way we're feeding right now. All right. So I increase the productivity artificially with feed. I can also increase that same productivity artificially with fertilizer, fertilize the plankton, turn the water green. I can raise that up to make it productive. But again, that doesn't mean my fish are going to be big. What makes the fish big is the balance between how many bass are in there and how much forage is in there. Because actually it's the bass population that controls the forage population. So if you have more bass, they'll be smaller in size, larger in total numbers. If you reduce the numbers of bass per acre, they'll be larger in size, but smaller in numbers. That's what I mean by balance. Okay. So for you, we're trying to control a filamentous algae situation. The first step is we don't really want to worry about the balance of our fishery until we get control of the weed problem. Because anything you add, feed or fertilizer, is energy for that algae. So you wouldn't want to add like a feeder to the pond right now until you get your algae under control. Now, how to control filamentous algae? That can be done a couple different ways. You've got like mechanical removal. That would be one way to do that. I like that, except that it's backbreakingly, brutally hard. But the nice thing about just straight pulling it out is if you are in a hyper eutrophic situation like you're describing, where you've got a lot of nutrients and the algae's taking that, by taking that, physically removing that algae out of the pond, it's called mechanical removal. But by physically removing it out, you're also removing the nutrients out, right? If we treat that, which you can totally treat it too, it's going to be a combination is what it's going to be, where the mechanical removal and the treatments, right? Because it'll just come back, and it comes back quick. So I would recommend that you use a chelated copper, and you can get them at Tractor Supply or any farm supply store. It's just like, it's blue liquid. Cutrine Plus is a common one that's around a lot. Let's see, there's KT, there's I don't know. I'm not going to name all the products. You need chelated copper. And that's important because how do we talk about that? So don't use copper sulfate. They'll try to talk you into using copper sulfate. I don't like using copper sulfate. It's too strong. It doesn't work as well as chelated, and you can use a lot less copper in your pond and get a lot longer control with chelated copper, because it works kind of like, I guess like an M&M, like a candy coating, right? So the chelation process is like molecularly, like kind of like tiny little M&Ms with coatings. And over time, some of the copper is not treated at all. So it just goes and kills the algae. But some of it has a thin candy coating, for lack of a better term, and it wears off in a few days. And then the copper is exposed in the water, and then it controls the algae once that coating wears off, and some of it's got a thicker coating. Again, same process. So you'll get a much longer treatment time with a chelated copper versus a copper sulfate, because copper sulfate is going to smoke it in 24 hours and be bound up and gone on you. So you're hitting it with way too hot a dose that doesn't last, only lasts about a day, where you can cut back to half a gallon per acre, depending on your water quality, and get like a couple of weeks worth of treatment out of it. You should see the filamentous burn off this time of year. If it's still holding filamentous through the summer, like usually that's a springtime problem where I'm from. I don't know where you're at, but if it's not burning off, it would kind of lean towards what you're talking about, being maybe a little bit too much nutrients, which is fueling that algae. I don't expect your fountain or your aeration will help you very much control the algae. It doesn't hurt my feelings that you have an aerator. For example, and what we just talked about, like if you have a really green pea soup green pond and you can have too much fertilizer, say you over fertilize and you grow too much plankton, the plankton uses oxygen at night. And when you have that many things alive in the water, it'll literally pull all the oxygen out and kill the fish, even if you have an aerator. And that's the part guys don't get. They're like, oh, I'm just going to buy an aerator. My pond will be fine. It won't. Again, I'm not mad at you for running one, but it is not the end all be all solution to oxygen problems, especially when you start getting into like, what we're talking about now. I hope that helps you out, man. And you can drop me a DM on Instagram, or here you can just shoot me a there's not enough people in here to worry about. I'm gonna put my everybody in the chat already has this anyway, so I'll put my number right here. That's my cell for this, and just shoot me a text if you have any questions about that. I do have some videos in like my subscribers section on YouTube. I'm sorry, on Instagram. There's a little bit of like a $5 a month charge or whatever, but I got some videos in there. Another product that I like to use if you want to stay away from copper and you're not afraid of spending a little bit more money is called Green Clean Pro. It's a peroxide based algicide, and it basically works like a blender for it just destroys the cell wall and breaks the algae down that way. So it's more of a physical removal, a grinder removal of the algae than a chemical kill of the algae, what the copper's doing. So depending on the size of the pond, like if it's a super small pond and you've got to really apply and apply and apply, I like that Green Clean Pro. It looks like cat litter. It's in a granular. They make it in liquid too, so you can spray it, but either of them work fine. It's I've got videos in the subscription page, but yeah, that's what I know about treating that, and it can be a booger. So yeah, put that number down and hit me up if you need any help. All right, let me go back and make sure I didn't miss any. Oh, Hooking Up's asking me the next guest I'm bringing on. Well, yesterday we had. I've actually talked to a couple biologists that I want to bring through. We got Thad. He's been following the page for a while, and he's Mississippi State, and he's he's solid biologist from out there, and I like to have him on and talk. And then Garrett Stamport. Garrett's been on a few times. You've probably watched the lives with him, but he's got some cool projects going out around Texas, Louisiana way, and I want to have him on. And the guys from Science of the Strike. I don't know if you guys have been watching their stuff, but they hit me up in the chat on here and said they want to do a collab. So that's pretty cool, man. Definitely looking forward to talking to those dudes. All right, where's Philip? Okay. He's concentrating on a 15-acre HOA pond. Tough to fish. Okay. All right. I'm going to get my glasses again. I can't read crap, boys. Getting old. That's where you learn you catch longer. 100% relative weights. Yep. Yep. You're now you see Philip's done a really good job of correlating the math to the fish population balance. So what he's saying here is he's catching bass that are 100 plus relative weight, but he does not getting bit, right? He's not going out and having big fish days or big fish number days. He's catching bigger fish, he's catching healthier fish, but he's catching fewer fish. And in the places where he's got, 80 to 90%, he's catching more fish, right? But they're just a little skinnier. And that sets up perfectly. I mean, it's showing you in the data right there. When you have fewer bass per acre, they get heavier, they get bigger faster. When you have more bass per acre, they're a little bit skinnier. You catch more fish, but you're not nearly going to catch as many big ones. And that's just simple population dynamics. That's why we take those measurements. It's how you could use that measurement as a fisherman to scout, I guess is the best term, because I can promise you're not going to run into too many places where you're going to catch 100% relative weight or better fish, even 95%. Once they go north of 95%, I'm interested. You got my attention. And especially if I see one that kicks one like 115, 120. All right. On the flip side of that coin, though, now, and this is where it can be confusing because, like, we've got some that have scored 150 at Sugar Hill, 140 at Sugar Hill. But what you have to remember there is there's some bias in those numbers because Sugar Hill is a pond that has trout stocked for forage, and Sugar Hill is a pond that's fed. And the numbers that we're using to calculate those weights are old numbers from bass populations back in the day when people still kept fish, but probably from like the 40s or 50s. I don't even know how old those old charts are that the relative weight calculations were derived off of. That's why I like to use them, because if we were to do a new relative weight chart based on the average weights of these bass, catch and release is be biased. All the bass would be skinny. Like we'd be saying, oh, well, these fish are looking good because but they're all rail thin. The average now is not what the average used to be, is my point. So that's why I like using the old numbers. What was achievable, what is achievable, decent growth. Yeah, without diets clear, that's that doesn't, that again, that's kind of an indicator of low productivity, right? You have lower productivity. But here's the thing, by adding dye, you further reduce the productivity. So that's why I like dye in like ornamental ponds, water features, golf course water hazards, places where there is no fisheries concern. We're really not trying to manage for the fishery because you're reducing the productivity for the fish by using dye. And again, I don't think dye is going to help you with controlling filamentous. It'll just float and live. So you can probably get that out of there and reinvest into a better treatment option. Frank's coming on. Look out. How to catch bass in Canada. I'll be glad to have you on, Frank. Hey, what's up, Mike? Thanks for joining, man. Yeah, I do that a lot, man. I nap more than I used to. Getting old, boys. All right, hooking up's got one. Place is unmanaged. Honey hole, 170 acres. Oh, you're getting 100, 110? Yeah, dude, that's beautiful right there. Now, I would expect up north and 110 acres of water, you guys have pike and things like that, right? Muskie, they stock all that stuff. So again, where the pond is located, where the lake is located, very important. You know that he's dealing with a different scenario, just like we described earlier. Where if he's got pike, even just a few, but the pike, that's the cool thing about it is the pike will behave in the same way. It's a predator fish. So if you have fewer numbers of pike in the lake, um, bigger pike, higher numbers of pike, you'll catch more pike, should be smaller generally. But you shouldn't have a stunted bass population because you have a predator that can take out, take out bass and kind of help you control them that way. But anything producing 110% relative weight has my attention. That's going to produce fish, the fish that I want. I'm not fishing for numbers. I'm fishing for bigs. Yes, Frank, you can come on. What are we going to talk about? Snow cones? Popsicles? Fishing with popsicles? Is that what you guys use for bait? What is the preferred bait in Canada through the ice? Has the ice melted yet? Oh, you got some pickerel? Man, we have got some gangster chain pickerel behind back here. I mean, some barracudas. All right, serious question. Everybody be serious now. Is night fishing equally productive all year, or is it best when the water and air temperatures are high? That, my friend, is a good question. And personally, I have never done big numbers at night, but I have done big fish at night. Um, I think the fish are spread out more. So they're not going to be, I don't know. Have you guys ever seen fish schooling and feeding at night? I haven't done that many night tournaments, but I've never really got on a bunch of feeders, at night. It seems like it's a random bite where you can cast in almost any direction. You don't even really know where they're going to be. They're not going to orient to the structure the same. Things kind of change over at night. Um, yeah, I'm with you on that, Dave. Night fishing can be good just for that reason alone. The chat's bumping ahead on me. I can't see anything. Hold on. I really can't see anything. Put my glasses back on. I probably shouldn't take them off. So yeah, I mean, based on my experience, I don't really have anything scientific to lend to you on that one, Frank, other than they loosen up off cover. Electrofishing gets way better at night because of that, because they're up higher in the water column and they're more spread out. And you can kind of run the boat wherever. You don't in the daytime, we'll run the boat around all the structure, and there's just kind of a technique to pull and fish out with the shock boat that way. Um, but I don't know. All the night tournaments and all the night fishing I've ever done, it's kind of a more sporadic bite, but you can catch some big fish at night. They'll be hunting. Oh, an igloo? Okay. That makes sense. 30-inch pickerel. That is a barracuda. You got them up there. Yeah, I'm kind of the same. I agree with you hooking up. I'm kind of just the bigger fish at night. Buzz baits, man. I like the noisy baits at night, something I can hear. You know what I used to throw all the time at night? It's the old jitterbug. That's a good bait. You could get that right cadence and get that thing skating a little bit. You know what I'm talking about? Get that little side to side action, chine walk it like a what's that chatterbait called that walks good like that? The sledgehammer, the jackhammer, or whatever. The one that it's got that erratic chine walk to it. Yeah, that you can get that if you find an old jitterbug with that metal lip and gear down, go down to a little lower gear on your don't bring it back real hard, and don't keep your rod tip high so the line's not in the water or just a little bit of it's in the water, and you get a lot of walking action out of an old jitterbug. I bet, man. Yeah, I agree, John. It's that roaming tendency they have at night. Um, it's just it's like it changes. It's like Mardi Gras, from day to night. It's like everything's out. Yeah, I love those kind of bites, man. Just blow up on you. Dave knows what I'm talking about. The jitterbug. Yeah, man, I'm with the bigger bait, bigger bass ideas for sure. Yeah, that XLR jitterbug. That's what I'm like. It's like that. It's a good one. And that one is it the one with the broken back on it? You seen that one? I love that one. But you can get them skating, and sometimes they'll get smoked. And it's already gone an hour over, man. I'm already on here an hour. Yeah, yeah. That's what I thought. Well, that was pretty good, boys. Um, Appreciate everybody coming on. 11 folks. We double digits tonight, boy. Getting paid. So yeah, what do we talk about? Oh, Gary's economics about money, and that guy's awesome. The jointed jiggerbugs, I like them. Well, I'll go fish around. That'll be a good post for Instagram using that's actually a good idea. Use some old lures that really aren't too popular anymore. Kind of antique retro bassin, kind of like that guy. That's a good idea to keep that in mind. All right, one more quick scroll back to make sure I didn't miss any questions. I'm gonna log out. But you know what's gonna happen? Because this is Fish Talk Daily. I'm gonna be back tomorrow. And I'm gonna do it again. You guys think of some topics, because if I do this every day, we're gonna need them. Thanks for all the questions too. Appreciate you. Appreciate you, Jackson. I hope that helps you on your algae issues. And like I said, just throw me a text or a DM and we'll get you straightened out on that. Pictures would help a lot on that as well. Any pictures you can throw my way. And all right. I don't see anything. All right, boys. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm with you on that, Dave. I love the old school stuff too. I've got I have to go dig it out. It's about this damn big. Um, a metal build Rapala or Rapala, however you say it, from my grandpa's tackle box from back in the day. That thing is awesome. I can't fish with it. There's no way if I lost it, I would cry. But yeah, that's a really good idea, boys. We'll use some old lures. I'll hit the pawn shops too. Right before we get off, that brings up another thing that I saw too, Frank. I like Matt and Tim. I got to meet those guys up at Mike's at the swim bait shop once, and then at ICAST a few times. And the times that I've talked to those dudes, they were really cool, good dudes. But I also heard who was saying that? Oh, Milliken. Milliken was talking about throwing big baits around the moon rises on one of those videos that he was on, the moon rise and the moon set. And I thought that was an interesting observation that he threw out there. Pay attention to the moon cycles on the rise and the set. And I can't remember what video it was, or I would tag it, or I would tell you, but I just can't remember. But I'm sure you boys follow Milliken. You've probably already seen it. Right? Tim Allen. What are you, drunk already, Frank? It's Matt and Tim, though, right? That's their names. I'm pretty sure. I don't know. That's what it is, John. He's hammered on the syrup. All right, boys. That was a good one. I appreciate you coming on with me. And like I said, I'm gonna do it again tomorrow. I don't know how long I'm gonna do this. I'm just gonna run it out, see how it does, see what it does for the engagement on YouTube. Think up a new topic, and it'll be advertised on Instagram. Again, appreciate everything, everyone. Good questions, good talk, and that's it. We'll see you tomorrow.